What's up, everybody? I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV. That's right. So listen, when I made this channel, the main reason why I made it is to bring awareness to the corruption and the unjust justice that goes on in the criminal justice system. And when I first made my first couple episodes, I was reached out to by a young lady, and her name's Shayna. She's not, obviously you guys can see her. She is a federal public defender, and she reached out to me so we could try to come up with some stuff for re-entry for guys getting out with nothing. And, you know, in previous episodes, I've said the public pretender, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard that. She is definitely not that. I've literally watched her go into the jail to visit a client, come out in tears because she felt like there was nothing she could do to help him. That's rare, and that's why I wanted to have her on the show to give you guys a little brief description of how she grew up and what she goes through in the criminal justice system as a federal public defender. So Shayna, I'm glad to have you on the show. Why don't you give them a little history, how was your childhood growing up? What made you get into this line of work?
Hey, thanks, Josh. I'm so glad to be here with you on DOC TV, and so glad that it's grown and you've got such a great reach and platform now to bring the message to the people. So I was born and raised in Canada, out west, mostly in the province of British Columbia, but I was actually born in what would be called like an Inuit village because my dad was a bush pilot, my mom was a nurse and a midwife. So that was one of the only places that midwifery is practiced in Canada at the time, or was practiced in Canada at the time. And you know, they met and I came along. My childhood was pretty, you know, great. I had everything I needed. My parents were apart a lot. There was a lot of that, but I was just an active kid. I grew up doing sports, skiing, swimming, horse riding. My mom just kept me busy. And then I went overseas at 19. I met my now ex-husband over in Turkey. And when I was working and living there, and I immigrated to the US, 2004, 2005, I started coming down to Florida, and believe me, I could not take the heat.
Yeah, it gets hot in Florida.
Yes.
Was it then that you decided that you wanted to go to school or to be a public defender?
No, I had no clue at that time. I was going through the immigration process, so I did a lot of like waiting tables. I started coaching at a local, I was a synchronized swimmer like my whole life. So I had stopped for a while I was living in Turkey, and then I started back up again. I made like a demo. I made a demo tape to try to get a synchronized swimming scholarship to go to school. So that was kind of like my first years in the US. I was like, I don't know, like my early 20s, and in a, you know, new marriage, etc.
Yeah. So how long after that was it that you got into the criminal justice system?
So I went to school in Birmingham, Alabama. I did get the scholarship. And when I graduated, my first job out was at like a nursing home or assisted living home. And then my husband was in deportation proceedings at the time because he had gone through the criminal justice system himself, and was then on the next stage, which was immigration. And while I was out trying to educate myself on immigration law and try to find a lawyer that could help him out, I got an interview with a criminal defense attorney in Birmingham, Alabama, and it all just started there.
So your ex-husband was arrested, and then he was in the system, obviously.
Right.
And so is that what made you at first become interested in it?
You know, I wasn't even really interested in it. I was just trying to find solutions. I was trying to ask the lawyers the right questions. I had no idea what this was all about. I had like never been to a jail. I had Yeah, when he got arrested in 2007, I had never been to a jail. I like, this was not my world at all. I didn't really grow up with people in my family getting in trouble. It was just a whole new world to me. So I was just trying to figure out, like, what do you ask a lawyer? How do you know, like, the law? What do we need to do? So I just was just educating myself. It really was an accident.
It's quite the accident.
Yeah.
So after you got into it and you had that interview, like what was next for Shayna after that?
Um, at the time, so this defense attorney, he had a really big docket. He was a court-appointed counsel, both state and federally, for criminal cases, and he also had an immigration practice. At that time, because of my own immigrant experience, and I was just immersed in it, I did a lot of the immigration law, but it was mainly just like paralegal work, you know, filing motions, doing some legal research to support the attorney, and just filing petitions,
So
making
you were
offers,
basically doing all the legwork for the
a lot
attorney.
of it. Yeah.
So how long was it until you actually became a federal public defender?
That office was closed into the private attorney. He was hired as a federal public defender when the office opened up in Birmingham.
Okay.
And I immediately went to interview there as for a legal assistant position, and I didn't get it. You know, I was young, I was really new in the field. I had like 2 years experience under my belt, so it took a while. There was like several years, probably from 2012 to about 2014, that I waited tables and I filed immigration petitions for mostly the Spanish speaking community in Birmingham until I got my last interview. I interviewed there 3 times and I got the job on the last time. I was like, are you gonna really hire me this time?
Well, they say third time's a charm.
I started as a receptionist, and at that time they had what was called the 782 retro amendment. So it meant that people that had had long-standing drug offenses could file for reductions, retroactive reductions to their sentences. So I did a lot of that work. It quickly turned into a legal assistant position, and then I started applying for investigator positions.
When you deal with so many people that are in jail and facing serious time, like what does that do to you personally? Because I'm sure you see a lot of stuff that you don't agree with or stuff that goes on in different cases that affect you. Like I was saying in the beginning, you know, when I've seen you cry when you've left a jail, like what level does that go to for you, like spiritually, mentally?
I think really it depends on the person, the case. That day that I was crying and affected by it was, I just knew that client had been tortured and been through a lot of trauma in his 10-year sentence in the federal system. And I wasn't sure. What had happened was he just had shut down and decided to stop talking entirely. Like we had 2 meetings at the jail that were about 1 to 2 hours in length, each of them. And I was just doing what I usually do, which is collect social history, personal history on our clients, so that I can do things like collect records, talk to witnesses, talk to family members, people in the community, and just build up a story on this person. So he just decided, I think it was shortly after they tried to administer a COVID test to him, he just stopped talking. And
So, okay. Has he talked since?
no, he's he's been transported to a federal medical facility for a competency evaluation because he wouldn't even respond to the expert psychologist that we had hired to do the evaluation. And instead of something that would take 1 hour or a few hours, at the jail he was already at, he's been on this like 3 or 4 month journey to a federal medical facility to do the same thing and still doesn't talk. I don't know.
Wow. That's sad. So what do you feel like when cases you've worked on, obviously I take it you know how much time that each case gets when it's resolved, right?
I do.
Okay. So do you feel like that you're in the state of Florida, correct?
Hmm.
Okay. So do you feel like in the state of Florida that they're handing out time for cases that is just beyond what like you think how much time they should get in prison is, and why do you think that is?
In some cases, yeah, the time that's given is really hefty. And usually I'll say that those are cases that involve victims um, or violence.
Right.
But I will say too that there are some where it works out really well. I think the really hard thing, at least in the federal system, is when there's the minimum mandatory sentences come up. Like, for example, we get a lot of gun and drug cases, and the way that the agents work is if they know that you're dealing and they've already made a couple of undercover buys on you, they know you have a good rap sheet, then they're gonna try to get you to sell a gun or buy a gun.
So they're kind of going to give you the rope to hang yourself.
Basically, yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's a setup in a lot of ways. You know, not to say that these guys should be out there dealing drugs and guns, but you know, the agents know that they go together, and if they're getting drugs from the guy already, might as well lock him up for even longer.
Yeah.
That's kind of the mentality. And it's really sad too, because there's such a level of in some cases desperation that drives people that have already been to prison 1 or 2 times to come back out maybe to a family situation that's unstable and go back into selling drugs because they got kids to feed, a wife or a significant other that's like on them to be there for the family and stuff, and they go back to what they know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's just what happens, and then the guy's stuck with, say, a 15-year minimum mandatory because he sold a few grams of crack or whatever the case may be, meth, whatever,
Yeah.
and try to work a gun into one of the deals, and they get it all on tape. Like the whole federal system with snitches is you get a guy that's doing, you know, maybe some lower time stuff, maybe some higher time stuff, like weights, I mean, and turn him into a snitch. And it's always snitch turns a snitch, turns a snitch, turns a snitch. And it's just an endless
An endless supply of snitches.
yeah, because you have to think about it like you got 3 young kids or whatever, like a young family, and they're like, well, they got you up against a wall with 15 years. The only way you can get out of it is by talking. Even then, you're not guaranteed a lower sentence. It's if the information you share is helpful to them, then they'll make an offer.
That's crazy.
There's no offer and there's no guarantee in the federal system as to what kind of a reduction you get if you cooperate.
And what would you say is the percentage of people that end up snitching?
I'd say it's pretty high. I don't know the exact number. I mean, the incentive is there. So it's just comes down to, does the guy want to preserve, you know, his honor or value in the street, or does he want to leave that all behind and get some benefit for it? I mean, I respect either choice.
Yeah.
I know that everybody has their own reason.
What made you get so involved in reentry to begin with?
Kind of silly. It like started off as like my own. I was brainstorming on ways that I could like monetize my own property and like help people out too. And I obviously like have a heart for helping people that have been through this situation. So I wanted to like turn my, I wanted to turn my yard into like an urban garden reentry center. And I'm sitting there like, how the heck can I do this when I go to work every day and I come home, I'm not like really connected with others that are in reentry per se. So I just started a group and just started connecting with people.
Like, what is your thoughts about people that go to prison and they get out and they have nothing? Like, from what you've seen, how hard is it for somebody that's in that position to get out and be successful? And by that, I mean never going back to prison, becoming financially secure, and having a residence.
So when somebody gets out of prison and has nothing, I think they're really at the mercy of, do they know what resources are available to them? And do they have any family members or friends or contacts that are willing to help them? And if neither of those are the case, it's like literally the streets. I'd say the majority of the people that I see come back to my office in probation, federal probation violations or supervised release violations, as they're called, is because they just really were not prepared. You know, a lot of times when guys don't serve really long, significant sentences and have a sort of a aha moment, come to Jesus moment, you know, personal transformation while they're on the inside, they're coming out with the same old habits and going back to the same old environment.
I agree with that 100%.
It just doesn't work.
Right. And that's been the case with me. You know, like that first time you go to jail, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to jail. Right. And then you spend 30, 60, 90, however many days in there. And you start that fear of the unknown goes away. You kind of become comfortable in your surroundings, and then you get out. Right. And for me, it was, well, now I've been to jail. I know what's going to go on. I know what I'm going to go through. So you almost become accustomed to going back. And then when you go to prison, that same thought process starts over again. Oh man, I'm going to prison. Bubba's going to be in there. I'm going to have to fight, like all this crazy stuff all the time. And you go there and you realize, like, it's not like it is in the movies. It's not like a lot of people say it is. And you become comfortable with that. And like you said, if you do 2 or 3 years, I mean, to some people that have never been to jail, that's a long time. But when you're in there, that time kind of rolls, you know, seasons come and seasons go. And the next thing you know, you're out. And if you have nothing and you don't know of any resources to go to, you're going to fall right back into that insanity cycle. And that's, you know, doing the same thing, expecting different results. But the only result you're going to get is to go back to prison, because that's what landed you there in the first place. The reason why I bring it up is because, you know, I have a friend that's done 15 years. He's getting ready to get out. He has no family. I think he has one person that, you know, is there for him other than me. And that's what made me passionate about the reentry. Now, I don't know the solution. I'm still just listening and trying to do the best I can, but you know, it's really sad, honestly. Have you seen people in the federal system where you feel like they got railroaded? Like whether it be proper representation, the sentence was crazy long for the crime.
You know, my blanket answer to that is going to be that the way that a lot of the laws are written and set up, and I'll say mainly conspiracy charges.
Yeah. Because they don't even need to catch you with anything.
No.
It's crazy.
No, you just need to be associated with the whole scheme. That's it. You know, and there's such a I've seen a couple of people go to trial, and it's just the saddest thing, because here's kind of a misconception that I see in a lot of clients. I'll hear the lawyer tell them over and over again, like, you know, and we'll go through the story like, okay, this is what they're going to set you up to look like. And they're like, just let me tell my story and convince them. And then we're like, okay, but even if you tell your story and try to convince them, the statute says, you know, this.
Right.
says this, and this is what the judge is going to instruct them on to get a conviction or whatever, or, not guilty, right?
Right.
And it's for some reason with a lot of people that just want to tell their story, they have this disconnect with how the laws are written and make a choice to go to trial when really it's just a slow guilty plea.
Yeah, they're kind of like they're set up to lose it even when they start it type deal.
Right. And I really feel for them, and it's like really hard conversations to have with them, with the clients, like, hey, because of course the penalties the guidelines become higher if you go to trial and you lose. In the federal guidelines, there's acceptance of responsibility depending on the base level offense. You get 2 levels or 3 levels off. If it's 6 higher levels, you get 3 levels off for acceptance of responsibility for your plea. So already built into the system is an incentive to plead guilty.
That's what I was just going to ask you. How do you feel about that?
I'm going to say that a lot of the cases are, and the investigations are pretty solid. I'm not going to say that some don't get dismissed. I had a fentanyl death case that got dismissed, recently, because there just simply wasn't the evidence of serious bodily harm.
So someone bought fentanyl, OD'd, and they tried to get the guy that sold it?
No, it was actually a female, and she's a raging drug addict, like on the street, just like selling everything she had. She and her mother were like partners in drug addiction. And she got caught going to the hospital under someone else's name and just doing some fraud. And while she was at the county jail, she got her mom to mail her some fentanyl patches. So she was
about that life.
she was getting birthday cards with fentanyl patches on them.
I've seen that in prison before.
Yeah, and bulking up her commissary, and her jail calls are just this horrible story of like manipulating her mother to do like lies. Oh, right. Calls were just like, oh. I'm like, what are you doing to your mother? And her mom was coming up there high to visit her when visitation was still possible. It was just a mess. But anyway, so she's getting these patches in the mail and she's distributing them within, the female dorm. So the victim, I guess, gets high and has some kind of episode and goes to the emergency room. They call it an OD, blah, blah, blah. Right? So, but in the discovery, there was no evidence of serious bodily harm. There was nothing to prove the level of her OD. There was nothing to show that she wasn't okay, after that incident. And so we combed through the evidence for a few months, and then, the attorney just said, hey, show us the charge, like show us what you're talking about here, because we don't see it. And they dropped the charge. So it happens.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen it happen.
Yeah, I'll say in the majority of cases that the investigation is usually something that's pretty easily provable. And in the federal system anyways, for the most part. I'm not going to say that like I don't get clients and just not believe them, like there's some people that I totally believe are not guilty and totally got wrapped into a really shitty situation, and they go to trial and want to tell their story, but the law is written against them. Like my first trial in Jacksonville, that's how I felt about that case. I did not feel like this young Mexican boy who was here to just, learn how to get a job, learn English, blah, 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 I don't think that he went to sell 3 kilos. I think he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think the lady that was doing it saw her window of opportunity and blamed it all on him. Yeah,
Crazy.
5 years later, he's probably back in Mexico now.
What's going on today in Shayna's life? I know you're involved in reentry. What is your goal for the next 5 years?
Oh, for the next 5 years, like I'd really like to get an organized national alliance on justice and reentry. I really see that people that have been through the system, men and women, and have changed their lives are the people that need to be empowered to change this, how this all works. How? By connecting with people pre-trial and working with them through their pre-trial experience. So when they get to sentencing, this group of mentors that's associated with this national alliance can appear at the sentencing hearings and back up the argument that their attorney or public defender panel attorney is making to the court, and really start to make some waves in alternative sentencing options. And even if they do get sentenced, that we're sending somebody that's prepared to hit the ground running when they get to prison, to be an educator, a mentor, and somebody that's going to be somebody that's there for his or her peers, you know? That's what I'd really like to see. That's where I think some major changes can be made. That's my hopes and dreams for the next 5 years.
Shayna, did you want to tell any of your social media guys maybe getting out of prison, or somebody that has a family member in prison that can reach out and you can talk to them and help them with reentry?
Absolutely. Please connect with us on the Facebook group Reentry Projects Mastermind. And you can connect with me personally. I generally limit my personal page just to me, and I'm goofy, so just beware. But yeah, the reentry stuff is all on the group page, and I look forward to meeting with you.
Awesome. So so that's going to wrap up today's interview. Shayna, I just want to thank you for coming on the channel.
Thank you, Josh.
When you meet people in this life, like for me, I can feel somebody's vibe right when I meet them. Like I can pretty much tell in the first hour if somebody's full of shit or if they're passionate and, they have a good heart. And I felt that when I met you, that you're obviously passionate about what you do. You have a good heart. So that's why I wanted to have you on the channel. But salute to you for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Make sure you turn on post notifications on all so you can hear it first. And with that, it's DOC TV, and we're out.